So hello Devox and hello world. This is the original Hello World written on acid-free dot matrix paper by Brian Kernighan, the author of the most famous program ever, Hello World, written in C language in 1978. This piece of computer history and this beautiful artwork was sold at the first ever auction of algorithms that was done by the Smithsonian Museum back in 2018. If you had $8,500 to spare, this could be yours to own forever. So with that piece of computer art, we begin our journey into a wonderful world of art created with code as our medium. So welcome along. This is the brief history of computer art. And it's a story, as many, that starts out in the United States of America. With this guy, Michael Knoll, he was an engineer working at Bell Laboratories. And Bell Laboratories was an exciting place in the post-war years. So Michael Knoll was a pivotal figure in the computer art movement, and he was working on a IBM mainframe computer. This is the computer used. And this was a computer that cost around $3 million, and they were programming it in a variety of different computer languages, but just for you to get a grasp on what this computer was like working at.
Not too well. We're still having trouble with F-drive in regard to density changing on the 1401.
I'd say, well, we'll put it on the 7090 then and use it for an output tape.
Yeah, that should cool it if you play it that way.
Yeah, no sweat. Okay, anything else?
Yeah, I'm glad I thought of it. I had it logged. You'll notice that when you come up on Balgol, and where the compiler has a beautiful bug in it, in case we get clobbered completely, you hit IC3 and give it a trot of 50, and that'll kick the job off, and that's all you have to do.
Okay, see you tomorrow.
So the compiler had a beautiful bug in it, and that's where our story begins. Because Michael Knoll, working on this thing, he was working on some sound analysis software, and he had a beautiful bug in the software. So what do you do when you get a bug in the software? You write an email or a memo, as they did back then. The original memo about this bug from Michael Knoll, this is the Fortran source code that produced the bug, and the output was this. And Michael Knoll took this around to his colleagues at Bell Laboratories and showed it to them and asked them, what do you think this is? And Elvin Burkamp, one of his colleagues, said, Michael, what you created here is computer art, and hence the term was coined. And this is believed to be the beginning of it all. But in my research for this talk, it all led me to London and the United Kingdom, and Paul Desmond Henry, who collected the northern bomb sites from the Allied bombers during the Second World War. And this was a mechanical computer that could have different variables set for wind direction, altitude, airspeed, and so forth. And what he did was that he took these mechanical computers and modified them into art-making machines. And you can see one of them at work, creating these beautiful, intricate, fractal-like, iterative patterns drawn on paper. Loads of these were produced. Some of them were on display at the Tate Gallery, Tate Modern, earlier this year, in their exhibition of computer-generated art. So the very first exhibition ever of computer-generated art was right here in London in 1962. And these are just some of the works. All of them are untitled. Around the same time, as I said, Michael Knoll was working at Bell Laboratories, and he drew much of his inspiration from the artists that had come before him. And we have two works here. One of them is by Michael Knoll. It's called Computer Composition with Lines. It's from 1965. The other one is by Pierre Mondrian. It's called Composition with Lines, and it's from 1917. That was the very beginning of the neoplasticism period of Mondrian's artwork, and you will probably be familiar with the works that came out of that. If you ever seen these paintings with big primary colored blocks with black lines in between them, that's what become of this. But Michael Knoll, liking to display the things he did to his colleagues, he took this around, showed them both of them, and asked his colleagues at Bell Labs, which do you find the most beautiful? And I can ask you guys the same question. So just point in the direction of the artwork that you find the most beautiful. You are a very mixed crowd, I can give you that much. It's probably easy to tell which one is created by a computer, which is created by a human. It's even easier to tell with these two. The one on the left is a work by Paul Klee. It's called High Roads and By Roads. It's from 1929, from his Bauhaus period. The other one is by a German mathematician called Friede Nake, and it's called Hommage à Paul Klee, so Homage to Paul Klee. It's also from 1965, so it showcases the work that was being done in parallel here in Europe at the time. Paul Klee is known for his composition and the use of lines and negative space in his works. And you can see that how things progress down. This is a very introspective work. It's about the choices we make in life, hence the title High Roads and By Roads. And what Paul Klee wanted to do was to recreate something like this with a computer program. So Friede Nake sat down and wrote an algorithm that drew the lines across and then filled in the blank space with random lines. There are many iterations of this one, but you can see the lineage between these two and where the inspiration came from. But the early works done by these people were really inspired by artists that had come before them and trying to imitate those works. That changed in 1971 with the French artist Manfred Moore. Manfred Moore put on an exhibition at the Paris Museum of Modern Art back then, and he had loads of computer-generated artworks on there. The one you're looking at on the right-hand side of the screen is one called Program Number 52, also titled Quark Lines. It was programmed in Fortran, and it has a very simple algorithm that places somewhere between 12 and 35 points across horizontally, and then just intertwines the lines down, takes a break, and then repeats the process. And he had loads of different things going on. This looks a bit like writing to me. It's all algorithmically generated, and there is a fair bit of randomness to what happens. So the output was never predetermined. This one was called Pour Pierre Bourbon. And Pierre Bourbon was a institution in French music, and one of the earliest people to use computers to compose music. This is him with his computers in the studio, writing some of the first orchestral soundtracks to ever be written by a computer. Now, I have an entirely different talk about music created by computers, so I will not delve into that. I will show you a little video with one of his students instead.
J'ai donc mis dans ma petite tête que je vais essayer de faire de l'art visuel à l'ordinateur. Aujourd'hui, c'est vite dit, mais un premier essai qui ne marchait pas du tout, c'était grâce à Pierre Barbeau, mais me suis entêté quand même, et c'était en 68, où tout était possible, on pouvait tout dire, tout penser, tout rêver, tout. Mais j'ai pris mon courage entre mes deux mains, j'ai frappé à la porte du directeur du centre de calcul et je lui ai dit que, bonjour monsieur, j'aimerais essayer de faire de l'art visuel sur ordinateur. Écoute, le gars qui m'a jeté un coup d'œil, je ne peux pas te dire, il avait peur que je vais tomber dingue et qu'il faut faire venir une infirmière, vite, ou... Enfin, art visuel, oui. Il a dit oui. Il a dit oui.
He said yes. This is Vera Molnar. She was a classically trained artist, and she grew an interest for computers and what they could do and how they could be used as mediums for creating art. But compared to the men that had come before her, she was a real artist, and she was also very inspired by Paul Klee. This is a work from 1970 called Searching for Paul Klee. And she had an entirely different approach to this. Instead of trying to imitate the artists that had inspired her, she came up with her own interpretations of the philosophies of Paul Klee. And she would divide the canvas into these little squares and then fill in those squares with different random patterns, generating this mesmerizing image. And this was part of a series of works that she did. This is from the years before, 1968 and 1969, a series of works called Interruptions. And again, it's all about repetition, about having lines that rotate within the space of the squares that fill the canvas. But Vera Molnar does something that is very uncomputeristic with this. She uses randomness to take things away, so we get these interruptions in between, adding some blank space in there, which brings this human element to it, which makes it more soft and more lively, and probably being the one that changed computer art from being something that was just imitating things to being something that was truly, truly expressive. We have to go back to Bell Laboratories because there were so many interesting things happening there. And Robert Tannen was a programmer at Bell Laboratories who had been tasked with a top secret assignment by the US military, which was to create a computer animated film about what happens when a nuclear device detonates at ground zero. With the recent events happening in the world, that is something that has a gravity to it that was not there when I started writing this talk. So I'm very glad that someone has used that technology to actually create art. An artist known as Stan van der Beek, Dutchman, living in the United States, worked with a jazz musician, Paul Montan, to create this one called Poem Fields, which is bitmap graphics printed on celluloid film and then set to this rather avant-garde jazz soundtrack that plays in the background. And this being computer generated but being printed on an analog medium like celluloid film is, it gets this gritty lo-fi aesthetic to it, which I find fairly pleasing. But it's all bitmap graphics, and it's programmed in Fortran, and it was done in the mid-1960s. It's a beautiful thing. Let's get back to something more local. Harold Cohen, classically trained British painter who had represented Great Britain on the Venice Biennale in 1966, moved to California and got a professorate at the San Diego University, where he got introduced to computer programming, and he got really curious about what this could mean for art and how we could use computers and programming to create art. And he created a program called Aaron, which is probably the first ever AI, air quotes, to create paintings. Now, this is one of the first paintings to be created by Aaron. It's called the Amsterdam Suite. It's from 1977. It was first displayed a year after. And at this time, Aaron could do abstract shapes in black and white. So this is all hand-colored after the fact. But this is Aaron at work drawing its images. Now, Aaron grew more and more sophisticated by every year. And this is a work from the late 1980s called Coming to a Lighter Place. At this time, Aaron had been taught the concepts of what different objects looked like. So things like people, foliage on trees and things that we see in the background, it knew about. But it was not instructed on how to draw these. It made its own decisions on how to actually perform the artwork. The only thing it knew was that it would draw the background first and then fill in, draw the people in the foreground, and then create a color composition for this as well. And this one has a very beautiful, very nicely balanced color composition, which is reminiscent of many of the great artworks that were there before. So Aaron, British made and the first AI to ever create art. For those of you who have seen my talk on computer music, know that I'm very fond of the musician Brian Eno. But he is also a visual artist, and this is a work he did called 77 Million Paintings. It's from 2007. It's based on things that Brian Eno has drawn or painted or photographed himself. And he has programmed an algorithm that recomposes these into an infinite stream of different paintings set to a algorithmically generated ambient soundtrack as well. 77 million painting might sound like a fairly random number, but that's the amount of paintings you would hope to see in a lifetime from the day as a child when you discover what art is until the day you step off this mortal coil. So it's a great work. It was available to own as a DVD, which obviously did not have the full 77,000 paintings that you would need to experience in the gallery space. And computers and computer art taking over the gallery space is something that started happening from the 1980s and onwards. This is a work by an American artist called Corey Archangel. It's called Super Mario Clouds. It was displayed on television screens in galleries, and it's an actual Super Mario Brothers Nintendo cartridge that has been modified by Corey Archangels to take away all the elements from the game, leaving only the serene clouds slowly drifting past on the blue, beautiful sky. And when I look at this, I think of the naturalists such as Turner, who painted dramatic cloudscapes. This is about as dramatic as it could get in 1987 when the game came out and what you could achieve in 8 bits. And it's a great artwork, and it also shows Corey Archangel's skills not only as an installation artist, but also his proficiency with computer programming and hacking, because changing a Nintendo Entertainment System cartridge to do this takes a certain amount of technical knowledge as well. And this was part of a movement that started really experimenting with computers and digital mediums as ways of expressing yourselves as an artist. This is a website that launched in 1993. It's called Jody.com. It's by John Hemskerk and Dirk Passemans, which is a Dutch artist duo. It's an endless maze of seemingly random things that you could find on a website. It has a very unconventional, chaotic design, and it challenges the traditional notions of what usability is. It explores the human-computer interaction in a very interesting way. And there were many websites like this. This is another one from a couple of years later. It's by Ben Benjamin, and it's called superbad.com. It starts out with a landing page that looks like any late 90s website, but as soon as you click something, you are again led into this maze of things. And this one was awarded a Webby Award in 1997 for one of the best websites on the internet. That might seem strange today, but the thing was that in these early days of the internet, as much as 10% of all websites were experimental websites like these. And it did not stop on what you could see in the browser window, because one of the ways we would teach ourselves how to build websites back in those times was that you would right-click in the browser window, go to the menu, view source to read the HTML behind the page. And there were things hidden in there as well. So some of the illicit material that you could find online, such as the Anarchist's Handbook, schematics for nuclear reactors and so forth. They even went to the extremes of putting things in the HTTP headers that no one would ever see and discover. So, but word of warning, there is a bit of graphic video game violence coming up, so if you do not want to experience that, please look away for a moment. I will take you to the United States of America again. And a artwork by Joseph Delappy called Elegy. This started as a Twitch stream on July 4th in 2018, and it ran for a full year until July 4th, the year after. This is a highly modified version of Grand Theft Auto 5, the game, and it started as a automatically playing game at midnight every single day. And every day, the characters in the game would go around and shoot the same amount of people who had been killed in gun-related violence in the United States up until that day, that year. So when they got to New Year's Eve 2018, it would be a whopping 14,730 homicides being acted out in the Twitch stream. If it had been allowed to play until New Year's Eve the year after, it would be way above 15,000. And all this while Katie Smith's recording from 1938 of God Bless America by Irving Berlin was playing in the background. And it's an astonishing work of art using a video game that has been highly criticized for the amount of violence in the game. Just turning the tables on everything, using that video game to critique the American society for the amount of actual real-life gun violence that is commonplace in US society. Makes you think, doesn't it? This is something by the Radical Software Group, which was a artist hacker collective. It's a work called Carnivore from 2002. It borrows its name from a piece of software that the FBI developed after the 9/11 attacks on the United States. And the FBI Carnivore software was made to monitor online traffic. And this thing does the same thing, being placed as a Wi-Fi hotspot in the gallery space, just listening for the packets moving around the network, and then just starts displaying private communications on screen. It's an open source piece of software, so you can actually go on GitHub, download and install this on your own computer and set this up and run it. And it's a very good way of commenting on the amount of surveillance that was already there online in 2002. Today, where the entire web economy is based on surveillance economy, that's an entirely different ballgame. So this was very before its time and very relevant when it first came about. I want to show you something different. It's really hard to read the code that is being written on the page, on the screen, so I have it on the printed page. This is a work called Biennial.py. It's by Eva and Franco Mattes, and it's a piece of Python source code from 2001. It was presented at the 29th Venice Biennale that year, and on the far end of the gallery space, this source code with handwritten annotations on it was on display. On a pedestal in the middle of the room, there were two computers that were constantly infecting each other with a computer virus, which incidentally, this is the source code for. This is the world's slowest virus. It only infects other Python source files. But if you read the code, which you probably are not able to do from where you sit now, you will notice some strange things about the language being used in this piece of Python code. It uses function names such as fornicate, chat, join, and it talks about my soul and my body. Because what they did with their computer virus is that they used the language of sexual reproduction and social interaction to describe how this computer virus actually works, the way it discovers other files to infect, the way it infects other things like a sexual transmittable disease. And it opens up some questions about where the digital world ends and where the organic world ends, and where this will lead when artificial intelligence keeps on developing and surpasses people and becomes part of our daily life. It's an interesting artwork that, again, was way ahead of its time. This is also a bit of computer source code. It's a Japanese thing written by Yusuke Endo. It's called Clobe. It's from 2010, and it's something called Equine, which is a program that outputs its own source code, and then you can run it again. But Yusuke Endo did something masterful. This is written in Ruby, by the way, because every time you run the program, the globe in the middle rotates by a few degrees and then just keeps on going. It's mesmerizing, and it shows a skill in the Python programming language that is way past what I'm able of doing. And it also shows a very good sense of creativity, sitting down writing a piece of software like this. It also shows how obfuscated Python source code can be, but that's an entirely different story. But compared to the Python work we just saw, this is also work about self-replication, but it takes a very different approach to it. This is much about safe introspection and looking inwards, which is very much part of Japanese philosophy and culture, whereas the other one is very invasive and has a very much more chaotic nature to it. So both of these programs and source codes, which are artworks in themselves, asks us very important questions. So this might be familiar to some of you. We had to have some monkeys in there. This is, of course, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which was one of the most hyped blockchain, crypto, collectible artworks that are out there. I'm not really that interested in the crypto side of things, but I found these ones quite interesting. They were launched in April 2021 by Yuga Labs. It's probably one of the more successful crypto artwork projects ever. But when I look at these, I see something reminiscent of Andy Warhol's industrial production artworks. So what Andy Warhol did with his pop art was that he took the tools of graphic design, the techniques of graphic design, and the tools of mass production to create his artworks. And that's being done in the same way here, where we have algorithms that create different but very similar apes. But there's something more to this, because if you look at these apes, they seem to have a very decadent lifestyle. And I choose to see that as a way of commenting on the way crypto was developing in the early 20s, becoming a source of massive speculation and a way to get rich quick in pyramid schemes. So what on earth does ballet have to do with this? Well, this is a ballet by Lucinda Childs, who is a choreographer, and it's simply just called dance. But there is something important with this, is that the dancers are not dancing to music at all. They are dancing to their own counts, and they have a set of instructions of basic ballet moves like chassés and pas de chance, and so to perform while moving across stage. And her choreography was inspired by an artist called Sol LeWitt. Sol LeWitt has never painted a single piece in his life. What he did was that he sat down and wrote instructions for how artworks were to be created. And then he left it to craftsmen to actually go out and create the works. And we can see craftsmen at work creating some of his many, many wall drawings here. Just to give you a grasp of what these instructions or artwork source codes, if you like, were like, his wall drawing number 280 from 1976 says, on a wall surface, any continuous stretch of wall, using a hard pencil, place 50 points at random. The points should be evenly distributed over the area of the wall, then make all the possible straight lines connecting pairs of points. Very similar to what Manfred Moore did with his computer graphics from the early 1970s. So this is really what conceptual art is all about. It's creating the idea of the artwork itself rather than the actual product. So if you walk into a gallery space and find a piece of banana peel on the floor, which could happen, that's a conceptual artwork where the instructions are for one of the security guards to eat a banana and drop the peel on the floor every single morning. So it all comes from this, and it's source code that's behind it. This is a beautiful thing. It's a work by Dutch artist Anna Riddler, and it's called The Mosaic Virus. It's from 2019. And they are tulip bulbs that constantly evolve. Anna Riddler took thousands upon thousands of photos of tulip bulbs and then used those to train a generative AI to create these videos. But it does not stop there, because if you look at these, you can see them having these small little twitchy movements to them, the way they grow and the way they close together. And that is linked in real time to the fluctuations in the Bitcoin market value. And Anna Riddler does something genius here, because back in the 17th century, there was something known as the tulip bubble. Has anyone heard of that? Yeah, there are quite a few hands going up. It's the first ever known financial speculation bubble ever, where priced tulip bulbs would soar to ridiculous prices. Some of the most sought after ones could cost you more than a house. And she uses that speculation bubble and links it with the speculation bubble of Bitcoin and uses the real-time trading price of Bitcoin to modify her artwork in real time. It's a thing of beauty. Let's stick with flowers. This is by Olia Liana. It's called A Comparative History of Classic Animated GIFs and Glitter Graphics, and it's from 2007. And it's on the bookend of a period of the web that we will sadly not get to experience again. So if you were not on the web before 2007, you missed out on something. Because in 2007, there was a change going on. Web 2.0 was coming about, which was much about user-generated content, but it was also about the content on the web being taken over by massive corporations. And up until that point, there was a very big amateur web where people had their own personal websites. And on these personal websites, you would find a load of GIF images that were there just for decoration. And at the start of this period, mid-90s, you would have the GIFs, like the woman dancing on the left side there. At the end, the aesthetic had changed entirely, where you would have these things called glitter graphics that were like these sparkly little stickers that my kids used to collect. And she takes these and places them side by side. It was displayed in the gallery space, just as you can see there. a bunch of CRT screens just showing these. You can go online. She has a web page where she has collected these and placed them side by side if you want to re-experience this period and have a great day, as it says. It's a very good way to reminisce about a bygone time of the internet. This might be something that some of you have seen. It's called Portrait of Edmund Bellamy, and it's by a French collective called Obvious. Anyone familiar with this one? No? Anyone into AI who recognize the signature in this one? You might not be able to read this. This is the algorithm for a generative adversarial network, which is what is used to create AI-generated images. And it's a min-max game where you have two competing algorithms where the one algorithm is trying to convince the other one that it's an actual image created by a human. And when one algorithm wins over the other one, it's deemed good enough to be displayed on the screen. And that's exactly what this is. It's a AI generative network that has been trained on thousands of classical painted portraits. So it has a lineage. Edmund Bellamy here has a family tree. The reason why this thing is important is that this is the first ever sort of generative AI work to ever be sold at an arts auction. And that happened on October 23rd in 2018. It was sold on Christie's. It had an estimate of going for somewhere between $7,000 and $10,000 US. Anyone want to take a guess on what the closing price was? And we can do pounds, we can do US currency. When the hammer went down, the price was £325,000. That's 60 times the estimate. And someone wanted to ride this wave. And this is another work from the same year by another artist working in generative AI called Mario Klingemann. It's called Memories of a Passerby, #1. And it consists of a cabinet with a powerful computer inside with two screens connected to it, where you have ever-evolving portraits being displayed side by side using the exact same techniques, but here you got an actual installation. And Mario Klingemann really wanted to follow in the footsteps of Obvious and make a killing on the auction market. The hype had died by this time. It was just a couple of months after. It didn't even reach the reserve price at the auction. It was never sold. So when it comes to AI-generated art, be very careful when you venture into the market, because hype bubbles burst fairly quickly. But some of these things can be used in a very interesting way, and this is from my home country, Norway. This is from the second largest city and city hall in Bergen, in Norway. Norwegian artist called Toril Johansen, who has made these beautiful jacquard loom weaves with loads of portraits on them, and it's called Representation for People and Those Who Represent Them. And what she did was that she went out, took 900 photos of actual citizens of the town of Bergen, and then used that to train an AI to generate 900 portraits of non-existing citizens of the city of Bergen. And then weave these on these tapestries that are on display throughout City Hall. And it's there as a memento for all the politicians to remember who they are there for. And I think this is a very good way of using generative AI to actually create something that has a deeper meaning to it. And I find this absolutely astonishing. I've been there to take a look at it and feel the fabric. It's beautiful.
Now, my darlings, AI systems often inherit the bias of the cis-white heteronormative patriarchy that controls our society. But here at the ZZ Show, we plan to disrupt the dataset by flooding it with a myriad of marvelous queer drag bodies. So without further ado, that's French, sit back, relax, get your clicking fingers at the ready as we begin the ZZ Show!
So this is something by British artist Jack Elves. I did not really want to show you the CC show, but it's such a fun thing. But the thing I want to talk about is this, which is the studies that he used before creating this AI-generated cabaret show. And there is this very widely used training sets for facial recognition AIs called Faces in the Wild. It has been trained on press photography from the early noughties, mid-noughties, and it consists mainly of middle-aged white men. A whooping 5% of photos of George Bush, who was president at the time, and it does not really represent the communities that we live in. So what Jack Elves did was that he went out to the drag community here in London and took portraits of drag kings and drag queens and swapped out 1 out of 10 of the images in that training set with those photos. And then he used the regular transitional algorithms to just make transitions in between the faces in the data set. And this was the result. This wonderful, outer-worldly, beautiful thing that is a very good reminder that when we work with AI, we need to include everyone. And that does not only count for AI. Everything we do with computers, we need to include all the people of all walks of life and that are part of our society, and this really shows how important that is. Which brings us to the big question, and I'm always putting myself out on a ledge with this one, trying to answer one of life's big questions. What is art? And what makes something into an artwork? This is obviously not art. This is generated by Dolly. And this was generated by Dolly when I asked Dolly to describe this photo for me, and then I used that description to... so ChatGPT described this photo to me, and then I used Dolly to create the other one. The one on the right-hand side is a work by Canadian artist Jeff Wall. It's called Mimic, and it's a photo from 1982. It's monumental. It's backlit and 2 by 2 meters when you get to see this in the gallery space, so it really takes you. It's a striking image. And, well, ChatGPT got some things right. The color of the t-shirt and the number of people in the photo. Something about the scenery is there. But it is not able to look beneath the surface and ask itself the questions, what are we really looking at here? So what are we really looking at? Well, we have a scenery where there's a Caucasian man and woman and an Asian man, and it's captured at the very moment the couple is about to overtake the Asian man in the front. And you also see the Caucasian man has this slanty-eyed, sort of racist gesture towards the Asian man. The girlfriend looks away in disgust to the side, and it's an act based on stereotypes and mimicry. And it's very striking, and it's also a very aggressive image. There is also, if you pay attention to the center of the image, look at the black dark line that goes smack down in the very middle next to the garage door there. A black line dividing the middle, so creating a division between these two groups, or the person on the side and the group of people on the other side. And it's an elaborate fake. Jeff Wall is known for using cinematography in his photos, and this was rehearsed and done over and over again to get the exact right shot. There is also a thing, if you look at the poses of the people in this photo, you can see that they are exact reflections of each other. So you get that question of who in this photo is mimicking who. Well, one thing is for sure is that Jeff Wall is mimicking French artist Gustave Caillebottes' Paris Street on a Rainy Day from 1877. And this is one of the things to know about all of Jeff Wall's works, is that he always references a classic painting from art's history. So in every single one of his works, you will find something that you can relate it to. Often these are displayed together in the gallery spaces to help us along, but you do not really need to know the art's history to get this. But if you see a Jeff Wall work on display, ask someone working there, the curators or anyone, what it's mimicking. So it has the central vanishing point, it has everything, but it also has the scenery of American suburbia and the concrete and a very uninspiring environment. Because this is a comment on the American dream and how it has failed the people living in the United States of America. It's about how the American society does not really appreciate the immigrants that helped build the American society, and that you still have a fair amount of racism in the United States in 1981 when this work was created, and sadly we still see that today. And that is what is hidden behind the surface in this photo. It's not obvious the minute you look at the work, but once you start digging into the details, those things become apparent. And this is what makes this into an interesting artwork, because in all of art there is more to it than what the eye can see. And one takeaway from this talk is that if you ever go out, experience art in galleries, there are knowledgeable people there. You can ask about the different works, and they will be glad to tell you about all these things that are there and bring things into context. And the thing on the left-hand side will never be art. It's just an AI-generated photo, which is okay as well. As we have seen, we can use AI to create proper artworks. You can probably use something like Dolly or Midjourney as well as a tool for creating art, even if it's ethically dubious. It all depends on what your intention is and what you want to say when you are creating the work. But you have to keep the human element in there. You have to put a bit of yourself into whatever you do. And Vera Molnar, who we met earlier, lived to be 100 years old. And even while she was a pioneer in computer art, she sat down every single evening of her life and drew just a single line on paper with pencil, just to remind herself of what the basics of her craft was. So we are at a time where creating art can be done with tools that are available to everyone, and everyone in this room knows how to program. And I encourage you to use the skills you have. You might not think of yourselves as artists, but challenge yourself. Try to experiment with something, but please do not only use AI, because if you do, you are left with the soulless and most boring things you can experience, like this. Thank you for coming. I'm Anders Norås. It's been a great day here at Devox. I hope you've had a great day as well. If you want to see something more that is a bit oddball, I'm doing another talk that's based on absurdist French literature tomorrow. There will be code in that one. Otherwise, have a great pub quiz, board games night, whatever you're doing. And thank you for coming.
Crafting beauty in this digital space. Every line, a touch of grace. Putting code in a warm embrace. In a world where lines are cold, craft the scenes where dreams explode. Colors flush, my digital brush, a masterpiece begins to unfold. From zeros and ones, we paint the sky. Algorithms dance as time goes by. Art in code, where visions fly, creating dreams that never die. In the language of light, we find our place. Crafting beauty in this digital space. Every line, a touch of grace. Art and code in a warm embrace.